Mr. Koop, today you spoke at the hearing at the margins of the winter session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, dedicated to the cyber-terrorism and other large-scale attacks on the Internet. What are the main characteristics that distinguishes cyber-terrorism from other forms of cybercrime?
There are many large-scale attacks on the Internet, meaning that many computers attack certain important computers of the critical infrastructure together. Cyberterrorism would be those attacks that do this with a terrorist purpose, so to create fear in society. They can be targeted at critical infrastructures, for example, banking or government services. And the particular characteristics there is the intent of the people committing it with a terrorist purpose. That is at the same time the problem of distinguishing this, because attackers on the Internet you don't see. They are behind computers, and you don't see which intent they have. So if computers on your side are attacked, be they computers of the financial infrastructure or of the government, you don't know exactly with which intent they are interfered with. It could be terrorists, but it could also be ordinary criminals. It could also be foreign states. And one of the problems with this field is that it's rather difficult to distinguish, therefore, between cyberterrorism, cybercrime, and cyber warfare. Which is also why I suggested that doing something about this, you might just want to focus on cybercrime, because this incorporates all these attacks, because any terrorist attacking computers will always also commit cybercrimes.
And what are the approaches that European countries are currently incorporating to tackle this problem, and the main challenges in regards to this?
That's a broad question. So what many countries are doing against this problem is to update their legal systems. Most countries have ratified the Cybercrime Convention of the Council of Europe, which is a very comprehensive and good instrument. So countries are updating their substantive laws, criminalizing various forms of attacks. I think they're doing that in a good manner. They are also updating their procedural laws, so the powers that the police can use to investigate and prosecute criminals committing this. I think there lie some challenges, because the procedural points have not always been implemented in all countries very, very well yet. So there remain some challenges there, also because the police has difficulty in catching up with the newer forms of investigation. The legal systems may need some extra updating there. What countries are also doing, but I think they face considerable challenges yet, is just to invest in capacities to do this. Investigating cybercrimes requires a lot of expertise. It also requires a lot of specialist knowledge and equipment that not all police have. So many countries have a special unit dedicated to cybercrime investigations, but often this is a fairly small unit with experts, but the rest of the police is not really well aware of this. And as cybercrime spreads, it's now becoming much more prevalent, so that also ordinary people become victims to this, which means that they also go to the ordinary police. There is a lot to, I think, still be gained by educating the general police on cybercrime, cyber investigation. And I think these centralized expertise units of cybercrime investigators also need to have more resources and more capacity.
And
so that is one of the main challenges. I think the legal part is dealt with by and large. There is still some room for improvement there, but it's more the practical side, the organizational side, that needs to be addressed. One additional big challenge is the cross-border nature of cybercrime, because almost by definition, if you have attacks on the Internet, it can be from one country to another. You often don't know from where an attack comes from. If you want to investigate evidence, even if it's a local perpetrator, they might still be using computer services from abroad. And classically speaking, police can only investigate on their own territory. So you need cooperation from other countries to get evidence from there. And although much have been invested in streamlining these procedures, they're still often fairly slow. And slowness is one thing you cannot afford in cybercrime. So there is a considerable challenge, I think, to improve the increasing cooperation between countries to gather evidence. And there's also a considerable challenge because you don't always know where evidence lies on the internet. It could be in any country, but sometimes you don't know which. So you also can't ask a particular country for assistance. There is a need for unilateral actions. But this is a very sensitive issue in light of national sovereignty. We don't want the police to investigate on other countries' territories. And that is, I think, one of the major challenges, which I do not have an immediate answer for, but that requires particular attention.
And to sum up, which are your recommendations to the Council of Europe and Committee of Ministers?
So my recommendations are to focus particularly on the procedural law. So, as I said, substantive law is by and large well enough dealt with. But procedural law, I think there is room for improvement. So the Council of Europe could study the implementation of the convention in the countries and try to fill the gaps there. Invest in the non-legal approaches, so do more capacity building, stimulate public-private partnerships. And also, one point I haven't mentioned yet, but which I focus particularly on in my recommendations, the internet is vulnerable and it will always be vulnerable. So you can try to do as much as you can to minimize the threat of attacks, but there will always be large-scale attacks. And one recommendation, therefore, is to not allow ourselves to become completely dependent on the internet. You see all over the place that governments, businesses, people themselves are doing more and more things on the internet, leaving the old ways of doing things behind. And there is a considerable risk in doing so when there are large-scale attacks, and there will be at some point. Then you really have a problem if the internet is all you have. So we need also to have good fallback options that should the internet be attacked in a large-scale way, we can still do business, we can still have government that is not completely reliant on the internet.
Thank you very much.